Today we will focus primarily upon how do we automate corrective actions, the different user privileges that you can assign, and then some key admin activities while dealing with the APM sphere, and then the much needed reports and dashboards that can actually reveal some startling insights into the way your applications behave. And then we will see just what value you can achieve with the help of in-depth analysis of these reports within Applications Manager. So let's quickly delve into the automating corrective actions part of today's agenda. If you see this next screen, you will probably get an idea as to the different kind of actions that you can create and automate within Applications Manager. Now, these are some of the actions that the product provides. Assuming, for example, say you would want to restart your virtual machine, for example, during the case of an unforeseen bottleneck, you can skip manually restarting the VM and instead automate the process, so you know every time a particular issue arises, by default this action is executed and the VM is restarted. Similarly, considering your Java-based applications and say for a certain problem, the only logical solution is to analyze the thread dump and then locate the problematic thread. Now again, manually generating the thread dump and then having to analyze it is one thing, but then if you could automate this thread dump or heap dump generation in order for you to just analyze and locate the problem, these corrective actions really come in handy in those situations. So let's just walk through a few more slides about actions and just what they can help you achieve in your environment, and then we will take a look within the product. So as you can see, this image is just a representative example of setting an action for your virtual machine, that is the VMware virtual machines that you might possibly be using. And you can see from the image the options, that is the action types include starting, stopping, or restarting virtual machine, and then you can assign these actions to the VMs associated to different groups. Now we just had a look at the corrective actions. Now besides having automated corrective actions, there are certain other actions that we like to call notification actions. Now the idea behind notification actions is sometimes you would not ideally know the action that you should probably automate when it comes to certain issues, in which case you would rather stay informed about that issue and then take a meaningful decision instead of automating it. So what you can perhaps do is automate this notification action. This could be either email or SMS, or better yet, if you have an integration with Service Desk Plus or ServiceNow as Applications Manager integrates, so you can realize the alarms that are generated within Applications Manager as tickets in Service Desk Plus. That is, every alarm that is raised will automatically get created and logged as a ticket in Service Desk Plus. So it becomes easier for your technicians to just find the ticket and then offer a possible resolution. And then this notification can also be transferred with the help of SNMP traps, provided the SNMP trap and the listener are configured in your machines in your IT infrastructure setup. So we will see one example of such notification actions, which would be the email action. Now, of course, the email action is quite simply as it suggests. You get notified through an email about the kind of problem that is existing or persisting in your application or server environment. So before we move any further, let me move to the product and let us just discuss about this email action and other actions that we saw. So this is the admin tab. I'm sure we are all familiar with the UI of the product. So please keep your eyes on my cursor as I navigate through the product so it becomes easier for you to follow. Now, we spoke about email actions. Right here under the actions tab, you can see all the different types of actions that we just saw in the presentation. And email action, so I click on email action and I create an email action by the name email today, and the from address and the to address has to be configured here. The subject that you would want to put for this particular email action, so it is easier for you to identify which alarm is this for which particular app or server, and then this message. Now of course, remember, while specifying the message, you can use a lot of attributes, that is attribute tags, as you can see right here, the attributes that I have selected. So if you want these information to also be reflected in the email, all you have to do is use these attributes in the content, and you should be able to see them in the email notification that you receive. So once I click on create action, I see the success message right here. So let us just see the email action that we created just now. So right here is the one we created by the name email today. And if you take the time to see all of these tabs here, you will find that there are tabs on the right by the names used by, running always, and edit as well as execute. Now of course, edit will allow you to edit that particular email action which we created. Used by is basically, it tells you the number of monitors that are actually using this particular email action. So when you click on it, you can see the distinct 2 monitors, the type of monitors, and the specific attributes for which these actions have been configured. And of course, if you would want to test your email action, you simply click on execute and you should immediately be able to see an email. Now let me just show you an example of how this email notification looks like. Now as you can see here, this is the email notification. Let me expand it. And if you see here, the monitor, the attribute, the reasons why this action was executed, the root cause of an underlying problem because of which this action, that is the alarm, was triggered, and the automated action was subsequently triggered as well. But when you click here, you will find the actual breakup of this CPU utilization process. So all the processes on your left and on the right, you should be able to see the amount of CPU percentage or memory percentage that is lying idle, that is represented by the numericals as you can see here. So this information will also be captured and transmitted through the email that you configure. But then before we do that, right here in the admin tab under product settings, you will have to configure your mail, your proxy server, or your SMS modem, which will be utilized to send these notifications. So going back to the presentation and resuming where we had left off. So this was about email actions, right? But then how do you configure an action or associate an action? To associate an action, you will first have to make sure that you have alerts triggered properly. So in order to ensure that these alerts are triggered properly, you will have to first configure thresholds. Now when thresholds are associated to say a particular attribute or say a monitor or monitor group, these thresholds when violated trigger the alarm, and these alarms consequently trigger the automated actions. So configuring thresholds and then configuring alarms for these thresholds and then configuring actions for these alarms, that is ideally the flow of the entire alarms and notification processes. And when we talk about alarms, as you can see from this screen, these alarms can be configured for individual monitors, monitors within monitor groups as a whole, and even for monitor types. For example, say all database monitors require a particular template. You can do that as well by simply selecting the monitor types option or a particular monitor group option, or similarly for specific individual monitors as well. As we can see here, right here is basically defining alarm rules for monitor group. Now this example basically represents that for a particular monitor group, you can have alarms. Now how do we make sure that a monitor group is, the status of the monitor group is represented correctly? Because assuming a monitor group has 10 monitors, when would you say is the ideal time to display that monitor's health as down? When one underlying monitor is down, or when two monitors are down, or say if all 10 are down. So these configurations can also be made. So for example, say if you would want to see the monitor status as down only when 3 or more monitors are down, you can configure the same through the product. And speaking about alarms, one common complaint that users typically see is about false alarms, that is. And we understand how this could actually be a frustrating experience to receive false alarms when your apps are functioning totally fine. And to tackle these, as you can see the 6 points on the screen, Applications Manager takes adequate measures so as to ensure that false alarms are not raised. Some of them, as you can see, is for example the network availability check. Now typically, assuming the instance where your Applications Manager is deployed is disconnected to the rest of the network, so naturally you will see anomaly in the data that you can possibly visualize, and you would perhaps be wondering why the data is improper. A simple network availability check will immediately let us know whether or not there is an actual problem with the server, or whether this is due to a disconnectivity in the network. Similarly, consecutive polls count. Now, the consecutive polls count ideally is what it does is when you poll the monitor 1 and the detail is presented, what Applications Manager does is when you set this value to say 2, the data will only be presented after 2 consecutive polls, and when both of the consecutive polls have the same matching results, Applications Manager will tell you for sure that this is not a false alarm and in fact a correct one. So when you see that 2 different polls reveal different statistics, then you can probably be confident and deduce that there is a problem and this is not the right alarm. Similarly, configuring dependent devices will also help in triggering alarms, that is false alarms, irrespective of whether or not they are in problem. So these can also be prevented. So we will go back to the product right now, and once again let me just show you how to create threshold profiles. Of course, we saw about actions. Now actions can only be associated to alarms, and alarms can only be triggered when threshold profiles are breached. So let us begin here. Now first, when I click on the view threshold profile, I should be able to see all the threshold profiles currently present within my setup, and that is precisely what I am seeing right here. And in some of the thresholds, you will perhaps find this description right here, that is, Applications Manager will offer some default thresholds. However, these are also editable, and then you can create your own threshold as well. And here are the criteria for which a subsequent alarm should be triggered, and again used by telling us the number of applications or servers that are actually using this particular threshold. Let me scroll down and add a new threshold. So while adding a new threshold, as you can see here, this threshold can be applied for numeric values, string values. However, float values only come into play when we are dealing with the APM Insight module. So we will select the numeric values, and now remember, these names that I'm putting are simply for the purpose of explanation. These thresholds could be a specific metric. For example, say you could name this threshold response time or queue count or any other metric like that. So the threshold name is specified, and let us explore the advanced option. So if you see the advanced option, you will understand that you will be able to configure these thresholds based upon varying severity levels. For example, say for critical severity, I enter the threshold limit of 95. And here is the custom message that I would want to see. Say here I enter 85, and then here perhaps 80, and then the custom messages. And we did speak about the polls, and right here you can see the different polls to try option, how many times to try out of how many consecutive polls. So what this tells is, if you mention the value as 2, so after the 2 consecutive polls are matched, that is the data collected is the same, only then this threshold will tell you that okay, the threshold has been reached and the alarm has been raised. So if there is a mismatch, you can actually understand that this is perhaps a false alarm and there is not anything to worry here. So we have created the threshold, and let me click on create threshold, and as you can see the success message, threshold profile has been created successfully, and right here is my threshold profile. So my threshold profile is here, the values are here, and it's used by none, quite obviously because we have not associated it to anything else. Clicking on the edit option should bring you back to the screen where you should be able to edit it. So going back to the presentation again, this was about configuring thresholds and configuring actions. Now I understand we are yet to see how to configure alarms, but that will come later on in this webinar after we have gone through user management. Now when we speak about user management, as the module name suggests, it is about assigning different privileges based upon the kind of role they have within your IT department and the kind of access as an admin you want them to have. So ideally, the default and the most important user role is the administrator, who has the power to create other users, assign privileges to other user roles, and while also retaining the power to add, edit, modify, and perform all configurable actions within the product. The delegated admin is somebody who takes over the admin privileges only during the absence of the administrator. So pretty much the same privileges as the admin. The user is strictly a read-only privilege, wherein the user will only be able to see all the data, all the performance metrics, but not be able to edit them. The operator should be able to edit them provided the administrator has given the permission to edit a particular monitor group. That is, operators are usually relevant to particular monitor groups. So they have complete visibility about the monitor groups they're associated with, including the option to edit and make changes. The manager is a strictly read-only role, coming into play only when it comes to SLA management, and usually not too active when it comes to the privileges granted to the manager role. So we will take a quick look at a few slides that talk about user roles, and then we will go to the product and try to understand it there. So this is the screen where you can configure the user roles, that is, enter the user names, fill out the fields, the credentials that a particular user will require to log into Applications Manager. And besides creating users, user management also allows us to import the users that you might possibly have in your Active Directory. And then, just like monitor groups to group monitors logically, user groups will enable you to group different users as a unity. So for example, there are a set of 5 technicians who are working on a particular problem or a monitor group. So it would be ideal if you could put all those 5 people and group them under one umbrella, which basically tells you that all of these people are working on a common problem or a common module. And then permissions as well as account policy, wherein Applications Manager tries to enforce some strong rules so as to make sure that you log in only through proper authorization, the credentials are correct, to make sure that any attempts to access your setup or alter your apps are prevented by making sure that the attempts to enter wrong passwords are limited. So these kind of some measures can also be enforced with the help of this product. So going back to the product once again, right here is the admin tab, and under product settings is the user management module. So right here you can see a lot of users already created. So what applications manager basically does is it allows you to create up to a maximum of 10 users usually, and these 10 users can enjoy different privileges based upon the kind of privileges you want them to have. And on my right, if you see the different tabs, the user groups are right here. A simple group is right here. A new group, add a new group, select the users that are already there, and you should be good to go. And let me just also show you how to create a new user. So this is the screen that we saw in the presentation. User, the description, the password, and the role. Now remember, when you assign roles, it is very important to make sure they enter and remember the passwords, because only through these credentials, these roles, the user roles, the operator or user will only be able to log in with those credentials. And then the monitor group which you want these users to be associated with. Here in domains, you can again create different domains and make sure you can import those users from that particular Active Directory into the product. Some permissions here, you can see a lot of options with checkboxes. So ideally this is where you choose to allow or probably disallow different configurable actions to different users. And then the kind of view you want these users to have, and the account policy that we were speaking about. So this is a quick look at the user management module. Again, going back to the presentation where we will see the next interesting topic today, which is admin activities. Now take a moment to look at this screen, and I will walk you through the different administrative tasks that are mentioned here. Of course, with the help of the downtime scheduler, you should be able to plan your outages and put your servers down for maintenance. So you realize that when you schedule a downtime, you will not see unnecessary alarms, because of course this is a deliberate outage that you have created. Performance polling, again, to make sure that the data that you have is correct, relevant, and as accurate as possible. More power when it comes to configuring your servers, the ability to take backup through different scripts, the ability to use REST APIs to achieve a lot of functions within Applications Manager. And then, of course, what we spoke about before, we have seen actions and we have seen thresholds, but we are yet to see alarms. And then how can these templates, that is the alarm templates, can be utilized along with log rules. So a quick look at all of these things is what we are going to be doing right now. Now speaking about maintenance first, we did speak about the downtime scheduler. Now you can plan this maintenance or downtime to occur on a daily basis, weekly basis, or you can do it based upon your custom requirement once or perhaps on this date. And you can schedule it based upon particular monitors or monitor groups. And during the maintenance period, Applications Manager will not bother you with unnecessary alarms about outages, because of course when you deliberately plan an outage, it only makes sense that the alarms be kept at bay. And what we just spoke about, action and alarm settings. So this screen that you see is basically the ability to create different alarms, or basically to configure how these alarms are generated is what you can do here. We will take a look at this screen within the product, but only after we have gone through a few more slides. Performance polling, again, it will help you, as you can see, to enable or disable a collection of data for the different metrics within Applications Manager. You can change the default setting of your servers, and as you can see here, so when, for example, these are general settings, Similarly, you can have settings for different custom monitor types. Which kind of information would you like Applications Manager to present? Which information do you think is perhaps not all that necessary? So all of these options can, of course, be configured within the product. And as I mentioned, now a particular monitor is associated with a particular threshold. So that threshold is violated and a subsequent alarm is raised, and that alarm is associated with an action and the action is triggered. Now ideally this is how it works, right? But then if you want the same process to happen, say for 1,000 servers or 500 servers that are perhaps running in your network. So ideally what we usually do or look for is some kind of template that we can apply to, say, for all the monitor groups, or say all the monitors within a monitor group, or say for all monitor types. For example, I want all of my application servers to exhibit this kind of behavior when a particular issue happens. So you can do that for monitor types, monitor groups, as well as monitors. Look at the backing up and restore scripts. If you take a moment to go through these 5 points, you will realize that with the help of the scripts you can find on the screen, you should be able to back up or even restore your database backup using the following PGSQL scripts. And then even for SQL databases, you can back them up with the help of the SQL Management Studio tool. And of course, VMware management tools will serve the same purpose if you'd want to create virtual machine snapshots. And lastly, for Windows servers or Linux servers, all database backup jobs can be automated with the use of the simple Windows task scheduler or the Linux cron job option when it comes to the Linux server. And then we did take a look at REST APIs when we were discussing about key admin features on the first slide. And again, the REST APIs should ideally help you to fetch data for any particular attribute using the XML or JSON parser. And using that, you can pull that data, and better yet, if you would want a particular metric to be displayed on a big screen in your organization, you simply utilize REST APIs within Applications Manager for that particular attribute, use the attribute ID, resource ID, and then display it for all of your team to take a look and probably analyze. And not just that, you can actually insert data into your own database in any format that you actually want it to be with the help of the REST APIs. Quick look at the different functions that you should be able to perform with these REST APIs. So the Applications Manager REST API that are available should be able to allow you to add or make changes to a particular monitor, schedule downtimes, and even let you configure the operations of different monitor groups. And then also help you assign user privileges, as we just saw in the user management tab. And then it will also allow you to perform all, if not most of the admin activities that we have been discussing so far. So what I'm going to do now is go to the product yet again. And if you see my cursor right here, I am in the Configure Alarms tab. And right here, as we discussed, you should be able to configure alarms by monitor group, and as well as monitor type. So when you create monitor type, for example, now if I select the URL monitors, you will see that the different attributes for which thresholds can be configured are listed right here. So for this, I already have the thresholds. So what I can possibly do is say associate a threshold, configure actions at attribute level, and then again the email today this was the action that we had created. So associate the actions, say for different types of severity, and then click on save. Now remember, now for example, we did see now that for connection time the threshold was already set, right? Now remember, I am not clicking on save just yet because I want to bring your attention towards this option right here which says override existing threshold configuration. Now let me close this and come back again. If you see this right here, you can see that the existing threshold values have been configured. So when you try creating or editing this response time, this associated threshold, if you choose to override the existing changes, that is when you use this option. Or if not, you do not. So the existing option stays as it is, and this gets created as a new one. So unless you want to replace it, you do not make use of this override existing option. But then of course, if you want to say for example the number of monitors, type of URL monitors keep increasing, and now you take the decision to change the threshold values to collect data based upon your requirement, what you will ideally have to do is overwrite all existing changes so as to make sure that the present change is reflected in all monitors of that particular monitor type. Again, another example of maybe a particular monitor. If you select the particular monitor, and let's try to configure alarms. Now we did see about thresholds before as well, and I was just trying to explain if you can create and override existing thresholds. But then here is where we configure alarms. So now I've chosen, for example, a particular monitor, and I want to configure the health. So you see here, once again, configure actions at attribute level, and for health, the alarm is configured. So I select the action. Now we realize that these actions were created for specific thresholds, right? Now what we are doing is simply associating these actions to the particular monitor. So what happens? The threshold value is breached and the alarm is raised, and for that alarm, if the alarm is critical based upon the threshold value we have suggested, this corresponding action will be executed. Now this is a simple email action. Now assuming if this was say a Java based application, say the Tomcat server, and I am configuring alarms for the Tomcat server, and I have an option, say this one, heap action, and every time the health is critical based upon the threshold violations, the heap dump will be generated if I have this option, and a subsequent email will also be triggered. So I have configured two actions for this thing. So of course you can play around with a lot of configurable actions and thresholds and alarms and make the best out of the product based upon your requirement. Here is the same for availability. The same options exactly like we had seen for the health status. So here you can also make sure that the dependent attributes are also included. And might I bring your attention to this one right here? We did speak about consecutive polling and polling intervals when we were discussing admin tabs, and right here when you try configuring alarms for availability, you should be able to find this. Of course, polling is how we determine the availability of different servers, so it only makes sense that we should be able to make these configurations right here. And then again, if 2 times the consecutive poll results are similar, that is report same statistics, is that when you want to see the alarm, or you want it for 5, or you want it with a single count. Similarly, you can exercise the same practice even for determining whether the status of the monitor should be up or not. So this is how you configure the alarm. So once again, might I get this across, that ideally we configure thresholds for different attributes. Yes, again, thresholds can be configured for different attributes for a particular monitor. or for the monitor as a whole, or for the monitor group as a whole, or for a particular monitor type. So these thresholds are configurable even to the deepest attribute level. And of course, you configure a threshold, you assign alerts to thresholds, and you assign actions to alerts. And that is the ideal way to constantly keep a track on the performance of your servers and to be ahead of the problems and fix them before they start to become a potential threat. So that was about admin actions, which brings us to the final topic of today, which is reports and dashboards. Now, of course, what happens in reports? Let me just quickly take you back to the presentation where we will discuss in detail about reports and dashboards. So it is very important as we keep hearing time and again from different admins and different organizations, the analysis of reports. Now, these reports could serve a lot of purposes besides analyzing the performance, besides the ability to compare the performance of a particular server or database or a virtual machine with respect to others. It also helps us to view historical data, not just data from the past, data from the present as well, in the form of reports for particular hours of the day or a particular day or even for weeks or months. And then heat charts and statistical reports are also available for better analysis. But then there are certain kinds of reports within Applications Manager, one of which is the capacity planning report, which helps users or admins to clearly make a decision or arrive at a decision whether or not their servers are being utilized adequately. Now, for example, take a look at this screen. So you can see options like undersized servers, oversized servers. Now, this should be able to tell you that, of course, on a day-to-day basis, if you come to think of it, there are a lot of servers right now in your management setup, in your monitoring setup, that are not being used to their full capacity. And in fact, if you actually take a look at your own servers, you will actually find that a lot of servers are being in fact overutilized. So these kind of insights are really, really important when it comes to making efficient use of the capacity that you already have in your network, while also minimizing the wastage of computing resources. So we will come to this, but then when the existing capacity is being underutilized, it kind of eliminates the need for a capacity upgrade. So oftentimes these capacity planning reports help us understand what would otherwise be neglected about the usage of the servers that are present in your network. Well, not just servers, this could be anything from virtual machines to servers to any other resources that are perhaps consuming or not consuming enough capacity. So as you can see right here, now this example is basically telling us clearly whether or not the servers on the left are overutilizing or underutilizing the server. As you can see, none of them are underutilizing, and this can be deduced from the CPU and memory utilization statistics. Now, adding to capacity planning report, another important report is what we call the forecast report. Now, of course, it is important to make sure or to always know that you have certain reports that help you understand whether or not your servers are being utilized to maximum capacity. But what if they are, or what if they aren't? And you actually need not just present data about the capacity utilization, you actually need data about the future as well. So you actually can prepare yourself when the situation actually comes. So today you see that the present utilization is as such and such, and within 1 month's time, what is the growth trend that your servers will exhibit? So that you can see by the forecast, by growth trend analysis, which is the left half of the screen. and on the right is the forecast by utilization. So this basically tells you at the current rate, based upon historical evidence, where would you likely see the performance of your apps, or at which rate will these attributes or statistics grow, so you can make an informed decision as regarding the future of your monitoring setup. But apart from the reports that you already have within Applications Manager, you can create custom reports and you can also schedule these reports. So these reports can be scheduled on a daily basis or weekly or monthly basis, or better yet, you can actually publish these reports on, say, open a new browser and then use the URL to publish the report and then display it on a big screen in your organization. So all your team members can actually derive insights all the time based upon analysis of these reports. These reports can again be pulled for different business hours, provided you specify the business hours within Applications Manager, whether it's Monday to Friday or whether it's the entire week. So based upon that, Applications Manager will take that business hour into consideration and pull out reports for that. So one last topic we will see before we move to the product and see reports and dashboards. So dashboard is basically, as you all are perhaps aware, a single unified console which gives you a lot of control and visibility about the way your applications are behaving. So visibility in the sense that you can choose to represent the entire infrastructure snapshot, that is all of the apps in your APM setup, or the monitor groups, the recent 10 alarms, and even specific metrics that you would probably want to visualize in the dashboard itself. And then the ability to create multiple dashboards and the ability to publish your dashboards in different screens. So that is about dashboards. Of course, these dashboards are easily customizable as well. So going back to the product and clicking right here on the reports tab. So right here, I'm on the reports tab, and on my left are the options that I can select for which I can visualize these reports. So when I click on monitor group, this drop down here should allow me to select the different monitor group or the specific monitor group that I want to see the report for. However, let me just show you a quick at a glance report of different monitor groups. So as you can see here, this is the different monitor groups availability statistics that we can see here for today and for this week as well. So you can customize the time range, and perhaps let me take the percentage report. No data available for this report. Nothing to worry. As you can see here, the snapshot reports are also present here. So all of these options on the right that you can see are the different types of reports for the particular monitor group that you can select. Let me show you something about the trend analysis report now. Now, when we talk about trend analysis report, again, you want to analyze the trend for a particular monitor. So you select that monitor, and right here you can see the different attributes for which you can analyze the trend for. So when I take the .NET monitor and say check out the heap size, right here you can see the report for that particular .NET application and the different heap size and the corresponding values precisely represented here. The hour of the day report for the same .NET monitor, the day of the week report, what was the performance or the status of this .NET monitor each day, the statistical report, and the heat chart for your particular .NET instance. So this is about .NET, but then again, if I select any other monitor, you will see that the attributes keep varying. So different attributes for the reports can be utilized. And same thing can be done for servers, application servers, database servers, web services. So for every different monitor type that is out there supported in Applications Manager, you can visualize reports for every possible attribute that you will require reports for, and then use them for analysis. So we did take a look at trend analysis report. Let me just quickly walk you through the capacity planning and the forecast reports before we start discussing about dashboards. So a quick look here. As we saw in the presentation, that is exactly what we can see here again. So the capacity planning report, as you would have seen, I had chosen the undersized servers, and you can see here clearly that 7 of my servers are being undersized, and that is because of the reason which you can see here marked in red, that is problems with its memory utilization. So you can take notes here for reference in order to make sure that you actually come back and pay heed to these. And let me close this one and show you quickly how the oversized servers look like. So if you look at this now, this is something that should really be of significant worry to any admin, that is having to watch all of your servers being oversized, and this would probably explain a lot of performance issues that spring up time and again. So let me just quickly walk you through the forecast reports. Again, choose your particular monitor group, monitor type, select the particular attribute, and as you can see here, for that particular attribute of that particular monitor type, that is the Tomcat, I believe I had selected, you see that this is the trend for 1 month, this being the trend for 2 months. And let me just close this and show you in terms of disk utilization, where there should be more data to visualize and understand. Well, there it is. So if you see on the left half of the screen, the growth trend forecast for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months, up to a period of 6 months. And on the right is based upon utilization. Now, of course, before you actually question, let me just tell you that these reports quite more often than not are extremely accurate and precise based upon the historical data that is used for analysis. However, if you for example, say in between, should you choose to alter the configurations and the way they are utilized, then this forecast trend might possibly take a while to consider and evaluate that historical data and then give you the forecast trend. So ideally, under the normal scheme of things based upon your regular usage, this should actually give you a very fair and somewhat, or say, close to precise idea about where your servers will stand in terms of their growth and in terms of their utilization in 1, 2, 3, or even 6 months time. So that is about forecast reports. Quick look at dashboards before we move to the presentation again and approach the end of the webinar, after having a quick look at the detailed insights that you can receive with the help of reports. So talking about dashboards, right here you can see the default dashboards that has a few performance widgets. The recent 10 alarms, the tabular data, the performance metric widget. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click here and click on a new dashboard and just show you how this new dashboard works. So I've created a new dashboard. So the description, the kind of columns, so how many columns do you want, the width, this is basically the appearance of your dashboard that you can utilize here, and the widget list. So I'm just going to select a few widgets that I want to see. And let me click on create. Well, there it is, the new dashboard that we just created along with the widgets that we added. Now remember, we just added a few widgets randomly. You can go ahead and edit the particular widget that you have added, as you can see here. And then right here you see that there's no data here basically. So what I'm going to do is say configure let me just choose a particular monitor so as to make sure that okay, we can visualize data here. So right here, now that I've configured it, you can see the data here. So any data that is important to you, that requires immediate attention, you want to visualize them in the dashboard, you can do that right here. Apart from that, let me just bring your attention here in the Actions tab, wherein you will see the option to publish the dashboard. Now you see the link to publish. You simply embed this link, and once you embed the link, you should ideally be able to visualize this dashboard in any screen that you would want. So as you can see here, when I use the URL, you can see that I can visualize the same dashboard in another tab as well. So you can obviously make use of this as many dashboards as you want. You can display them across screens to have better information and better transparency among your team, so as to make sure everybody understands the condition of the apps and their underlying problems. So going back to the presentation, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite my colleague to speak about some analytical part of Applications Manager for the next few minutes. So he's going to brief you about the kind of insights, the really valuable insights that you would otherwise will not be able to visualize through the help of analytics employed within Applications Manager to pull out some data in the form of reports.
Within the next few minutes, we will just go through a quick overview of the advanced analytics part under Applications Manager. And as you know, advanced analytics has been recently added into Applications Manager, and it is going to give you an analytical aspect plugged into your Applications Manager. So somebody might be wondering, why would we need analytics in the first place while we already have all the data and reports available in Applications Manager, right? So let's list out some key information on why you need analytics with Applications Manager. It's a very important question to ask. So in order to get or understand the complete data that is available in Applications Manager and to recognize the patterns happening over a period of time, we need analytics, and it also helps you to give a deep dive analysis whenever you have some important questions to be answered with respect to the data that has been collected from Applications Manager. And there's a lot of rich visualizations which can lead you to get those answers. So whenever there is multiple aspects or multiple visualizations available, you'll be able to visually analyze the data, not by just looking at a tabular report. You'll be able to visually analyze the data through charts and different type of charts actually. And you'll also be able to collaborate with your colleagues and get to a quick decision making while in the process of analyzing your data, right? So these are some added advantage, or I would say adding value to your Applications Manager with the help of Analytics Plus, right? So what do you gain actually from this integration between Applications Manager and Analytics Plus is that you get all your 100 plus KPIs readily represented on dashboards and reports, and you get 70 plus out of the box reports and dashboards as well, so that you don't have to sit and create all those reports and dashboards on your own. The product is readily giving you all these out of the box reports and dashboards. And more to it, you will be having all these dashboards specific for monitor types like SAP, Azure, Amazon AWS, etc. And you'll also have options to segregate your environments like cloud environment, physical and virtual infrastructure separately, right? So in this session, actually, we'll look at 3 key dashboards that is coming out of the box with the analytical part. So the first one would be monitoring group overview, and second, the KPI overview, and then the current alarm snapshot. So I believe those are predominantly used dashboards within the analytical part. And the monitoring group overview dashboard is going to give you a collective information of all the monitor groups put under one single page. So if somebody is looking into predominantly into a monitor group performance or its availability, or always tracking those performances, they'll be able to view all those required informations from one single page. so that they don't need to run about on each and every monitor groups and then finding out which device went down or what's actually causing the performance degradation, so on. So they'll be having all those informations in one single page. And similarly, you'll be able to identify which monitor group is more troublesome, meaning which is generating more kind of critical alarms or which is generating more number of alarms in the whole, so on. And you'll also be able to get some numerical widgets which can give you quick numbers on number of devices that are offline and number of monitor groups that are down at the moment, so on. Right. So this is one of the snapshot of the monitor group overview, which can give you some metrics like the critical monitor groups, the count of critical monitor groups, and similarly number of monitor groups which are offline at the moment, and the monitor group related critical alarms and the warning alarm numbers as well. So let me just quickly jump to our product page so that you'll be able to understand it better. So these monitor group or any dashboard that you have in Analytics Plus will be very interactive in nature. You'll be having filters which you can apply on the go. You don't need to edit any of your reports or dashboards. You can just apply any one filter and the whole dashboard gets modified according to the filter that you apply, right? And similarly, when you want to slice and dice your data, like the main aspect of having Analytics Plus is to give you the capability to analyze your data to its core. So you'll be able to slice and dice your data based on the selection on the go. And similarly, when you wanted to find out some answers for your questions. So for example, there's a report named troublesome monitor groups, so which lists down all those monitor groups which are creating more number of alarms within your environment. So in this case, it's clearly a particular group which says payroll apps, which is giving us more number of alarms segregated by critical, attention, and trouble. And within that, if you want to just find out what actually caused these many attention alarms, you can just drill down into that particular section of it, and then you can find out which attribute actually contributes more to it. And with that drill down option, you'll be able to find out that the transactions per minute attribute actually caused more number of alarms, which is actually giving us a spike in the particular payroll apps alarms. And further, if you want to find out what's actually happening within that particular attribute, you'll be able to further drill down and find out probably by the hour of the day. We just want to know at which particular hour of the day these types of alarms are being more generated. So here you can see that between 12 and 14, we have more number of alarms related to transactions per minute. So likewise, you can keep drilling down as much as you want, or you can just view the underlying data to find out which alarm actually had caused this particular problem there, right? So you'll be able to find out the last line detail from your existing dashboard itself. So you don't need to run about on all these reports. You just have to have these dashboards live, and every user who gets access to this dashboard will be able to drill down and find out those details from their desk itself, right? So that is some of the major reports that we have clubbed together under monitor group overview. So for example, you have monitor groups generating most alarms, and then monitor groups by device availability. So every other report is customizable, and you'll be able to find out what's happening behind those data as well. Now, coming back to the presentation, let's look at the next dashboard, which is the KPI overview. So this dashboard would actually give you all the numerical widgets. So there are a lot of numerical widgets which you can use for your day-to-day operations, like getting to know how many monitors are down at the moment, or how many are unmanaged at the moment, or it could be a inventory-based KPI, or it could be a performance-based KPI. You can just take a stock of what's happening lively at the moment. So this is a snapshot of it, where you can find out the inventory-based KPIs showing us the managed numbers and the unmanaged numbers, and then the data database endpoints with virtualization monitored counts, so on. So let's quickly jump into the live dashboard for that. And this is how it looks like. So apart from inventory KPIs, you also have alarm-based KPIs. And this particular KPI is actually comparing your current value with the previous month's value. And similarly here, the comparison indicators will also represent whether it is on a good upward trend or a downward trend, whether it is something to be of concern or if it is a good trend or so. The colors actually indicate whether it is a good trend or not, right? And similarly, you have monitor group KPIs and performance KPIs as well. And every KPI that you see here is customizable, and you can always modify what attribute that you want to put in there or which particular KPI you want to monitor there, right? So, and the final dashboard that we would be looking at is the current alarm snapshot page or dashboard, which is the most looked at snapshot, and it gives a clear picture for the administrators for their day-to-day operations so that they can get to know the current status of alarms by severity or monitor type. You can find out the technician-wise splits of alarms to share the load in case if you're acknowledging the alarms on the applications manager, right? So let's look at this particular snapshot of current alarm snapshot. Okay, so this is giving you all the user filters on the top, where you can find out that we have user filters for period, monitor type, monitor name, category, so on. And you'll also have some widgets for the number of warning alarms, critical alarms, acknowledged and unacknowledged alarms, right? So let's just quickly look at the live dashboard here. So here you can see that the current alarm status by monitor type is a particular report which gives you the count of alarms raised for each monitor type. So, and you can actually drill down or slice and dice them to find out the actual required information from the dashboard itself. And you'll also be able to get the load on each of the technicians with their acknowledged numbers, right? So you can find out a particular technician having 4 attention alarms and 3 critical alarms, so on, right? So every report or dashboard that you see in the analytics part is interactive in mode, and you can share them with other users who can also get to know what's happening in your environment, right? So let's quickly go back to our okay. So with that short description and introduction on the analytics part, I believe you might be interested in getting to know more about that. So we are also coming up with a lot of enhancements with the advanced analytics part, where you will be able to get more in-depth out-of-the-box reports for individual monitor types as well. And we are also coming up with specific dashboards for those monitor types. And map-based reports is one other visualization which you can use when you have your inventory across the globe as. So that is pretty much all about the advanced analytics part on this section. And if you need more information, you can check out the link that is available there, manageengine.com/analytics-plus. Okay. And to end this webinar, you'll also be able to find out native iOS apps and Android apps for Applications Manager. And that brings us to the end of this webinar session. You can